minds in history. Why are we discussing tonight of all nights Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi? Seemingly, tonight we should be talking about perhaps Rosh Hashanah or Slichot, but the reason why I've decided that tonight we should discuss Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi is because tonight is Chai Elul. Chai Elul is, in the Jewish calendar, or at least in the Chabad calendar, an extremely significant date. It's the date that the first Rebbe of Chabad was born. It's also the date that the founder of the Chabad, of the Hasidic movement in general, was born. So I thought it would be appropriate that we dedicate tonight's discussion to the founding of the Hasidic and the Chabad movement, who the individuals were, and I'll focus more on this. In the past, I've focused on the Baal Shem Tov, some incredible individual, but tonight I'll focus more on Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, with touches of discussion about the Baal Shem Tov. So, who was Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, and what is Chabad? What is the organization, the group that he made? Who are we? What do we stand for? And who was our founder? That's the scoop tonight. Okay. So the short answer is he was some great, brilliant man. He was the first Rebbe of the Chabad movement, and he literally changed the Jewish world in a very drastic way. But let me give you a bit of background. So Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi was actually born, to parents in the year 1745, known as in the town of Liadi. And it was a part of Poland at the time. And he had parents, one by the name of Baruch and the name of Rivka. They had 3 sons, and they're all incredible scholars. So they lived in Bohemia, and they were able to trace themselves back to the great rabbi, the Maharal of Prague, who was legendary, so to speak, having brought the Golem, which today is considered not necessarily true, but we have the writings of the Maharal of Prague, and he was an incredible individual. Now, in those days, this new movement had come about. This new movement that had come about was a movement that was started by the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was a young man by the name of Yisrael, and he he was part of a mystical group of hidden tzaddikim, and they would go around encouraging people, helping people out. When they saw a Jew in need, they would try to help them. And when they saw children that were not educated, they would try to set up a little school to help those kids learn Torah. These were a particular group, and their leader was a man by the name of Adam Baal Shem. And it was kind of a quiet little group doing undercover work. They had mystical teachings. They were very spiritual inclined, but they kind of kept themselves and did their own thing undercover, nobody knew of their greatness. And then it came a time that the Baal Shem Tov, this young boy named Yisrael, was told that it's no longer good that he should be acting. He's now become the leader of this underground movement. It's now time to teach the teachings of this mysticism and the secrets of the Torah, and bring that joy and that meaning and that spirituality to all Jewish behavior, to all Jewish people. And that's what the Baal Shem Tov started to do. He started to go around from town to town, and the way he would engage people is by telling them stories of miracles. And then people would come and ask him, and he would do miracles for them. He was a miracle worker, and he would also teach very short mystical ideas. And it wasn't like an extremely fast-growing group, but people started to find out about the Baal Shem Tov. He was the first Rebbe, and people started flocking to him and following him and becoming all types of followers. And slowly but surely, he grew in more and more followers. And as his job was to teach his followers to go on to teach others, the Baal Shem Tov came from an incredible home himself, and there's great stories about his birth. But as I said, I want to focus on the Alter Rebbe. He eventually grew in name, and people would come from all over Europe to receive a blessing from the Baal Shem Tov, to get his blessing and to hear his advice. And he started teaching a new set of principles. It wasn't new principles, but it was old ideas from Torah, but he just highlighted them as being central important points. Here's an example of something that the Baal Shem Tov started teaching. He said, it says that God created the world in 7 days. Did he create the world in 7 days and then leave it? Or is he still part of the world? So he said, it says in the Medrash, which was written over 1,000 years before him, that the Tehillim says, La'olam Hashem dvarach nitzav b'shamayim, God, your word always stands in heaven. It seems to be saying that there's some type of word. What is it talking about? So it says the word that you use to create the world is constantly there recreating the world. So the Baal Shem Tov taught us something absolutely fundamental in the way we understand the world. God is not some distant God in a faraway place that we cannot connect to. God is right here. We're inside God, so to speak. And he's constantly, every moment, remaking the world. If he were to stop making the world for one moment, the world would cease to exist. That's the concept of what we call Bria Yesh Ma'ayin, creating something from nothing. It needs a constant re-life and giving it rebirth. Now, the Baal Shem Tov had many students, of which one of his students became the next successor of the Hasidic movement. And that was a man by the name of the Maggid of Mezrich. However, the Alter Rebbe, who's the main character of our discussion tonight, his father was an undercover follower of the Baal Shem Tov. In those days, to be a follower of the Baal Shem Tov was not very popular because there was lots of opposition to the Baal Shem Tov and his movement. Why? Because they had just come from the period of the pogroms, the Chelmunitsky pogroms, not too early. It was still, even though it happened close to 100 years earlier, it was still a stain, and people were still traumatized from it. That's number one. And number two is another event that happened just even more closer to this period is this false messiah by the name of Shabtai Tzvi, who was some crazy guy, big, massive Torah scholar, but he was also a maniac. And he convinced a huge percentage of the Jewish population at the time that he is the Mashiach, and Mashiach is about to come, and they should sell their homes and go to Israel or start getting ready, until eventually the I believe it was the ruler of Turkey found out and called the Shabtai Tzvi, and he had him arrested, and he said, what's your story? And he said, told him that he's the Messiah. And then he said, okay, well, you got a choice. Either you convert to Islam or you will be killed. Now, most Jews would rather die than convert to Islam. Certainly, if you consider some great spiritual leader. But he converted and then said, it was my job to refine Islam. Of course, that was a huge blow to those people that had been following him. And now they realized that he was just a fake. And that was a massive blow. So that was the one issue that really caused trouble for the Jewish people and caused a lot of people to start testing and challenging everybody. And anything new and exciting that happened within Judaism, especially Kabbalah related. We talk about people not learning Kabbalah until the age of 40. They had this man, Shabtai Tzvi, was teaching Kabbalah. And there you go. Look what bad things happen. So people become really strict and really wary of anything to do with Kabbalah or anything to do with mysticism or any new changes that seemed different from the norm. And Judaism became somewhat depressing. we know that they divided Judaism into different synagogues, synagogue for the learned and synagogue for the ignorant, synagogue for the and the problem was that these people were never mixing with the other, so they never had a true flavor of connection. And the Baal Shem Tov came and changed all that. But this was this difficult time, and he brought life. So we're told that Chai Elul means the word Chai is the 18th of Elul, is the date that the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe were born. Both the founder of the whole Hasidic movement and, incredibly enough, the founder of the Chabad movement in particular, there was hundreds of Hasidic movements that came about, were born on the same day. So going forward, the Baal Shem Tov had a student by the name of the Maggid of Mezrich, who became the leader of the Hasidic movement. And going forward, he had many other students that also became leaders in their own rights of other new Hasidic groups. Now we're told that the Baal Shem Tov had told the Alter Rebbe's father that he should not reveal to anybody, and specifically not to his son, that he is a chassid of the Baal Shem Tov. He shouldn't tell him anything about the Baal Shem Tov. Why? Because in order for the Alter Rebbe to be successful, he has to come to Hasidism on his own. He cannot be, so to speak, tainted by somebody else's experiences. So the Alter Rebbe, when he was born on Chai Elul, he was immediately different. He was this huge prodigy. His mind was like the most incredible mind people had ever seen. Everything that he opened, just an absolute photographical memory, and he was able to understand and appreciate all the types of learning. So much so that he was already writing books and explaining some of the deepest parts and most technical parts of halakha, known as the laws of how to check out astrology and the movements of the sun and the moon. The Alter Rebbe was already at the age of 13 teaching this to great scholars. So he was literally in a league in and of himself. So that was number one. He started writing books and compiling and teaching scholars of immense level from a young age. And at the age of around, I think it was 15 or so, in those days, commonly people got married around the age of 15. And then the wife would still stay with her parents. They would, I suppose, live together for a few months. And then very often the boys would still go off and study in yeshiva even after getting married. I don't know why they did it that way, but that's the way they did. And they would go away for a few years usually. So the Alter Rebbe now he was this incredible scholar. He, at the age of 15, mastered almost every known book of Judaism at the time, at least all the famous ones. So he needed to find a new path in the way of how to serve Hashem, something deeper. So there was two famous places of where to go. There was close to him, to the Lithuanian camp, the great teacher and master, the Vilna Gaon, and that would have been the one side. The Vilna Gaon was known to be the great Talmudic scholar of the time. Or he can go to the Maggid of Mezrich. And he wasn't sure which way he should go, which school. So eventually he decided to go to the Maggid of Mezrich. Why? He said, because I know how to learn. Learning, I've still yet to see somebody that can teach me really how to learn more than I know. I know how to learn. I'm not looking to learn how to learn. But I heard that in Mezrich, they teach how to daven. That no one's ever taught me before. I'd love to learn how to daven. So I'm going to go to Mezrich and see how to daven. So that's how he ends himself up in Mezrich. And he goes to Mezrich, and over there he finds the Maggid of Mezrich, and he starts to explore it. And over time, he starts to believe in the concept of Hasidism. He becomes a Chassid. And the Maggid of Mezrich sets him up to learn just with him and his son. So this young newcomer, he was the youngest of the group. The Maggid of Mezrich had a group of many very strong Hasidim, very genius and big wise people, and he would spend time with teaching them. And the idea is that these people were all so great in and of their own right, he would then take them and lead them, make them leaders of other places. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything to add? No? Okay. No questions so far, so I'm going to go further. Joe, remember the story that you just said? Irene, did you hear the story of the Queen? Oh no, you came afterwards, so I'll tell you quickly just to help us divide up the class. Joe, how about you say it?
Okay, just a lovely story of the late Queen when she would go to Balmoral, where they had a family castle there, and to get away from the limelight and to de-stress a bit. And she'd go there, but it's still accompanied by her bodyguard, the royal equerry. And in Balmoral, a little town, that they have Sunday markets like they do here. So she would go to the Sunday market with a bodyguard, but dressed down, and just walking around looking at the stalls. And the family had moved into the area recently. And the lady, the housewife from the family, she decided to go to the Sunday market as well. And she's standing at one of the stalls next to the Queen, but she doesn't recognize it. So she turns around to the Queen and she asks the Queen, heard there's a rumor that the Queen might be in town this weekend. Have you met her? And the Queen, very, very smart, she turns around to the lady. She says, no, I haven't. But she points to the bodyguard, he has.
I love that story. Okay, so it's a good one because it shows on. I think she had a certain level of humility and a sensitivity not to embarrass people, not to hurt people's feelings. Can you imagine when the woman did find out who she was talking to? She was probably glad that she was no longer in the presence of the Queen. But I think that's what they say about her, that she was very humble and very duty-orientated. She knew what her life's mission was, and she knew why she was there. And she wasn't about to try to search other opportunities and try to give it up. She was looking to serve the people. And I think that that's quite an incredible thing that we learn about the Queen. So, l'chaim to the Queen, even though she's no longer physically alive, but we say l'chaim to her life, that she should have a good memory, and also for continued blessings for her son, King Charles III, that they should reign and be good to all people, and particularly to the Jewish people, as they have been in the past. So, talking about kings, we're getting back to the story of the king of the Chabad movement, or the start of the Chabad movement, Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi. Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi found himself in Mezhebush, by this great scholar, the Bagid of Mezrich, and he learns how to daven, how to understand mysticism. And he had a private one-on-one class with his teacher, him and his teacher's brother, known as the Malach. And they would learn all types of insights, in addition to what was being taught. Very deep mystical concepts about the soul and about the Torah, of what is the spirituality, of what's happening behind everything. So eventually, when the Maggid passed away, many of his greatest students each went to their own town and city, and they became like a Rebbe unto themselves. So the Maggid of Mezrich, his goal was not just to stay in one place. The Baal Shem Tov used to travel from town to town. The Maggid, his job, he sat in one place and people came to him. He made them into leaders, and then he sent them off to be leaders in their own areas. And Hasidism really grows off that, because each town has its own great giant, or each town, each area around the Ukraine, Russian area. So as a result of all of this, Hasidism becomes very mainstream and very strong and very growing. And then when the Baal Shem Tov passes away, sorry, not the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid of Mezrich, the Baal Shem Tov had passed away earlier, people started to flock towards other leaders. And the main leader at the time was a man by the name of Mendel Horodaka. And the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, became his follower. But the Alter Rebbe wanted eventually the Maggid of Mendel of Horodok, who the Alter Rebbe or Shneur Zalman Liadi considered to be his teacher. He decided he's going to move to Israel. But one of the reasons why we believe that he wanted to leave to Israel is simply because they were being attacked by the opponents to the Hasidic movement. There were a bunch of, we called them the Mitnagdim. Who were these opponents? These opponents were people that were wary of Hasidism. They didn't believe that Hasidism is a true way of serving God. They believed it's some type of novel new way. And they would persecute the Hasidim for a long time. You're changing the way Judaism have always been practiced, and you're focusing on happiness and love and all those type of things, which as Jews, historically hadn't been practicing as much. So as a result, the people of one second. As a result, the people that were the students of the Alter Rebbe decided to, some of them, the leaders decided to go to Israel to kind of escape all the harsh criticism, and also to be in Israel. They wanted to set up a Hasidic court in Israel. And these were the great masters and the Alter Rebbe's teacher, and he felt he should go with. And he started traveling towards Israel. And as they were about to leave Russia, his teacher finally convinced him and said, I don't understand. How can you leave? You have so many people that considered you their leader. You have even more people than I have. You, the Alter Rebbe, the youngest student of the Maggid of Mezrich, you got thousands of followers. The whole of Russia, many people from all over Russia consider themselves your followers. You're going to leave and come with me to the land of Israel. And eventually the Alter Rebbe said, okay, fine, I will stay behind and I will take care of the Hasidim in Russia and Ukraine and Poland, as many as he could, which was a very difficult thing. Now, the Alter Rebbe himself was from Lithuania, which was the seat of the opposition. Why was it the seat of the opposition? Because one of the greatest scholars of the time was famously the Vilna Gaon. And the Vilna Gaon, who was an incredible scholar, he didn't know much about the Hasidic movement as far as we know, and he would spread lies about it. And as a result, he opposed it because he had been told negative things about it. Although the Alter Rebbe believed that he had another reason for opposing it. He said there was controversy and there was in-house fighting that caused people to lie and to pick sides, and that's the reason why the Vilna Gaon was lied to about it. But that's why he did stop believing it. So he actually said that the reason why we've had this debate, the reason why we have this disagreement, so to speak, between myself and the Vilna Gaon, and the Vilna Gaon has outlawed me, is because we have different opinions about God's existence. You see, there's a concept that says in the teachings of the Arizal, the great Kabbalist, that there's a concept known as tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means contraction, and that means making smaller. And the Arizal writes that God was contracted himself in order for the world to exist. So the question is that literal or is it figuratively speaking? Does he literally contract himself? So we know that it means only figuratively, because God is everywhere. There's no space that's void of God. God is everything. He filled all of existence before the world was created. And he continues to fill all of existence. He just makes the existences or the people in the world believe that they exist without God, but they don't really. You could feel like God doesn't exist, but it's only almost an illusion. God's existence is everywhere, and he's keeping things alive, as we said. So therefore, the question was, how come people don't see it, or whoops, what happened to my camera? Apologies. How come we don't see God? If God is everywhere, how come we don't see God? And the answer to that is because God has hidden himself inside creation. But not to God, to us. We can't see God because we just see physical things. So therefore, when the Arizal said God contracted himself, he wasn't saying literally God contracted himself. He kind of contracted himself. It just appears as though he contracted himself. But he really didn't. He's really everywhere. So if you say that, the Vilna Gaon did not like that concept. Why did he not like that concept? Because he said, hold on a second, if you're going to say that people are the ones that are responsible for, if you're going to say that God is everywhere, then people will start doing bad things and say, oh, this is God too. They'll steer their friend and they say, that's also good. And they'll start doing what like Shabtai Tzvi, this false Messiah had done. What had he done? He went and shechted a pig and says, oh, I'm elevating it as part of the godly spirit. Or I'm converting to Islam because I'm elevating Islam and refining the sparks of. So that's what the Vilna Gaon said. If you're going to say that God is everywhere, and you say that Tzimtzum is literal, then what's going to happen? As a result of that, if you're going to say that the contraction is a literal contraction, the Vilna Gaon said, if you say God literally contracted the world, you'll say, and he left the sins out of the world. Those are not what God wants you to touch, not the sins. The Alter Rebbe says, no. God is everywhere. And he just says, I want you to do this part of me, not that part of me. And I put this test, this negative thing, this thing that you're not allowed to do as a test. I said, pig is not kosher, don't eat it. Not for you to eat it. Yes, God's even in the pig. God's even sustaining the pig, but not in a way that he wants it, but in a way that he doesn't want it. So therefore, it's much more severe when you do something when you've actually been commanded by it. Okay. I want to go forward to a few other points, and I think, does anyone have any questions so far on anything that I've said tonight? I think I've messed up a few of the points I've tried to say, but has anybody got any questions? Everybody got everything clear? Okay, so why don't we start with the Chabad movement? That's the next point I want to discuss with you. What is Chabad and what is this Chabad movement? So the Alter Rebbe, he was one of many great students of the Maggid of Message, of the successor, the second leader of the Hasidic movement. And he started teaching Hasidism, but he started teaching it in a very different way. The way he taught it is he taught things with an intellectual spin. He would explain things intellectually. So instead of just saying God created the world and is constantly creating the world, like the Baal Shem Tov, he would explain to you how it works. And he gave examples. For example, he would say, if you throw a ball up in the air, the ball's eventually going to come down. How high will it go? If a little bit, as soon as the energy that puts it up ceases, the ball will fall back down, right? So here he gives an example of the sea split. He says the wind was pushing the sea to stay up. As soon as the wind goes away, the sea returns. He says the same thing. The natural state of existence is that we shouldn't exist. There should be no world. There should only be God. That's the natural state of existence. So therefore, in order for God to make a reality which goes against its natural way of being, it needs a constant force bringing it into existence. That's something that the Baal Shem Tov never explained, for example. Did you understand that example? It's a bit complicated. Joe, is that clear?
Oh, yes, it ties in beautifully with, in science, the concept of entropy, which talks about structure. So things like to return in nature, things like to return to being unstructured. And it takes energy to create a structure, whether it's a compound or a planet or whatever. And then over time, everything that's been created naturally will break down again to its basic components, unless more energy is injected to maintain the structure.
That's right. Everything actually returns back to its original state. It's incredible. I was talking with somebody that recently had a pair of tefillin, and the tefillin is from his grandfather. It's just been sitting in his cupboard, and it was all peeling and falling apart. And I said, do you think when your grandfather put this on tefillin on last, some whatever 50, 60 years ago, do you think it looked like this? No. It's just been sitting on the shelf. But what happens, even just sitting on the shelf for a long time, eventually makes it fall apart. If you had a house that just sat there and was not taken care of, eventually it would just start falling apart, right? That's true. So it returns back to its natural status. So, but when we're talking about something which goes against its nature, this is even more a great example. It's not just that you made it into something, but if you're saying that I want the water to stand up, water flows downwards, gravity pushes the water down. If I want water to go against gravity, to go not in its natural way and stand up, then I need a constant force. And as soon as that force stops, so will the the thing return to its original state. So in the case of the splitting of the sea, it will turn to just be a flat sea. So it says the same things of the world, it will automatically return to being nothing, just a part of God, if God can't stop making it. So every single moment, God is remaking the world right now. That's an example of something that the Baal Shem Tov taught, and then the Rebbe made it intellectual. Okay, and that's all of Chabad Hasidus. He made it intellectual. What does it mean intellectual? That we can understand and then properly, what's the right word? Instill it in ourselves and integrate it into our own consciousness. Only how? Only through properly understanding it. But if you don't properly understand, you're going to struggle. So the Alter Rebbe wants us to have a new understanding of Judaism. As a result, this opposition, he now had a new opposition, and that opposition was not just from the original opposers, but within the Hasidic court himself. Some people felt that he was pushing the boundary and explaining mysticism and secrets of the Torah too deeply. Like people were getting it, and that generally was only privy to the very smart and the very pious and holy, and now you're teaching it to everybody. So some of his contemporaries and even other students of the Maggid of Mezrich started arguing with him about his approach until he was able to show that he was the rightful, that the Maggid of Mezrich had actually wanted him to teach the intellectual way of understanding God and Judaism. And that's when he started the Chabad movement, and he started teaching the teachings of Hasidism, but in a very understandable intellectual way, not just as a concept that you just take for granted. So this was the main concept that the Alter Rebbe taught. The Alter Rebbe divided his teachings into many books, but he wrote two major works. The first is probably today the most famous comprehensive book on Jewish mysticism, known as the Tanya. For those of you that want, the Tanya is a principal work of Chabad Hasidism, understanding Judaism from an intellectual perspective, that you can clearly understand it. It's a long, difficult book to understand, but if you have the right teacher, it's actually quite incredible. A really incredible book. And this was the first book. This book talks about, for example, what is a soul? What is our mission in this world? How do we overcome all the struggles? And what it gives you is, instead of just giving you direct answers, it takes you all the way back to your beginning, all the way back to that cycle, so that you can have a constant understanding of who you are, what a soul is, and what your mission is, what the Torah is. And once you have that understanding, when you try to approach a position of how to overcome some of our issues, you then have all these tools that you've already got, that you've gained, ideas of knowledge, new ideas of knowledge about your soul, about the power of doing a mitzvah, power of doing more than just a mitzvah, or whatever it is. Now that you understand it, you're going to run to do it. And that's why Chabad Hasidim, we run into the streets to put on film with people, because we have such a deep appreciation of what it's actually achieving. So then you want to put it on other people. You want other people to have that incredible feeling. You want to spread that. You want to spread all the kindness and all the joy of the Hasidic movement. So as a result, there was this debate, as I mentioned before, that some of his colleagues disagreed with him and believed that there was no reason to have to teach things so intellectually that they should be so understood. He was breaking protocol and he was playing with spirituality. And as a result, they started calling us the Chabad movement. But overall, he was into Chabad stood for the intellect. What is the intellect? Chachma bin and das. Overall, he focused on teaching Judaism in the most intellectual, understood way, more than any way been taught by any other philosopher or Jewish teacher in Jewish history, more than Maimonides, more than Rabbi Huda. This was, and not only that, he wrote thousands of pages, besides the Tanya, explaining how a person can understand the soul of Judaism. What's going on behind the scenes? What happens when you light the Shabbat candles? What happens when you put on tefillin? Who's putting on tefillin? What are you? What's a soul? What happens when you struggle and you want to do something else, so that you're having spiritual struggles, physical, mundane struggles? How do you cope with all that? All those type of things, or what he wrote in the Tanya. And then he has lots of other books, which are called Maimara Admor Zaken, books that he compiled and that were given to him. Books that he compiled based on the Hasidic movement. So it's called the Discourses of the Alter Rebbe, that discuss intellectual ideas about the existence of God and the soul and our mission in life, Torah, mitzvot, etc. He wrote another incredible book known as the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Code of Jewish Law. Now, till then, there was a Code of Jewish Law written, but it was written very short, and you basically needed to be a massive scholar to understand it, because it wrote so short. There was a whole back and forth always between all the different factions of people that were explaining the Shulchan Aruch. So what he did, and he was asked by his teacher, the Maggid of Medrash, to do this, to write a new Shulchan Aruch, and this time include all the commentaries and find a verdict based on all the commentaries and all the opinions. This is an incredibly huge undertaking, and that's how we have today the book known as the Shulchan Aruch Harav, or the Code of Jewish Law. So you can imagine this man was so brilliant that he revolutionized a whole new approach to understanding Judaism in a very deep way, always based on previous discussion, but just compiling it, at the same time being an incredible teacher of halacha, of Jewish law, not just the Muslim. That's what's incredible about it, is most people are usually either one or the other. They're either very into Jewish law, or they're very into spirituality, but usually don't do both. The Alter Rebbe did both. That was the incredible thing about it. Okay, does anybody have any questions about anything that I've said so far? No. Okay, there's one more point that I'm going to discuss, and then we will call it a night, because yes, the point I want to discuss finally is the point of there's so much to discuss about him, but we're just touching on basics. Today is his birthday. The Alter Rebbe was the leader of Russian Jewry, most of Russian Jewry, for all that time. And at one point, we know famously that Napoleon went around and started conquering different parts of the world, of Europe, and he conquered big parts of Europe. And one of the biggest parts of Napoleon's downfall is when he decided to invade Russia. Now, when Napoleon invaded Russia, many of the Torah scholars and Torah giants at the time were very happy about this, because the Russians did not treat the Jews well at all. And there was great poverty, and Jews were only allowed to live in particular areas known as the Pale of Settlement. And They were quite persecuted, the Jewish people in Russia in those days. So they thought that that Napoleon had promised emancipation and freedom, and everyone could live wherever they want. So many of the rabbis at the time prayed for Napoleon. Well, the Alter Rebbe was fervently against Napoleon. He says Napoleon is here to undermine Judaism and to destroy what we believe. How do we know this? How do you know this? Well, he knew this because he knew things from his perspective, but he also knew that that Napoleon in the countries in Italy and other countries and France, when he became emperor of those countries, or whatever he called himself, the supreme ruler of these countries, what he did is he started telling all the religions how he wanted them to behave. And he even went to the Jewish leaders and told them he wants them to make a Sanhedrin, the great court that used to sit in Jerusalem. And then once he forced them to make some type of Sanhedrin or something like that, he started he started to force the Jews. Napoleon started to force the Jews to do things against Judaism. He started saying the Jewish people must follow what I want them to do. So he says the Jewish people must change Jewish law. They must no longer say that it's forbidden for a non-Jew to marry a Jew. No, they must be allowed to marry each other. Don't say that Jewish people have to do circumcisions and stuff. So Napoleon looked at the big he was the big redeemer or whatever. We know that Napoleon was actually one of the greatest killers of people because of the amount of people that died simply today. You know, people thought for the last today, history looks actually quite, what's the right term? Quite negatively at Napoleon. He was just a blood-hungry, power-hungry individual that just wanted more and more power. And it didn't make a difference. He lost millions of soldiers and he killed millions of people simply to try to gain his power. And the Alter Rebbe considered him to be evil. In today's day and age, Napoleon, as great as he was as a warrior, he was considered to be one of the worst killers of his time. More soldiers died, millions of soldiers. It was something unheard of till the Second World War. Sorry, till the First and Second World War. He was literally more soldiers died in that war than almost anybody else because of Napoleon. And he also believed that he had to be the ruler and that he would come into a country and say, oh, the Jewish people can live and there'll be freedom, but also only on my terms. And the Alter Rebbe, many of the rabbis at the time were very pro-Napoleon. They thought that, well, Russia's been so anti-Semitic, so problematic, Napoleon would be bad. The Alter Rebbe fervently fought against Napoleon, and even though the Russians themselves. And there's another reason for that is because there's a Jewish law generally says that Jewish people are supposed to be, in most circumstances, we're supposed to be, what's the right term? Connected and pro our own country. What's the right term that I'm looking for? We should making sure that we serve our own country and supporting our own country and not supporting the enemy, even if there's other Jews that live in the enemy country. So generally, that's Jewish principle. So as a result, the Alter Rebbe started sending spies, acting as undercover soldiers for the Russian government. And he has famously there was one famous story about this, was he had a very great chassid named Ramosha Maizlis, who also spoke French and Russian, and he managed to make his way very high up in the French army, Napoleon's army, so much so that he would sometimes sit in meetings with Napoleon as a translator. He was acting as a translator, and there were some moves that Napoleon had, strategic moves, and he would then send messages back to the Russians via the Alter Rebbe and others. And Napoleon once realized that every message that he's sending is being caught, and the Russians are always prepared for his tactics. So he realizes that he must have a spy. And that's when he sees this religious Jew as part of his retinue, and he's one of these translators. And he says, "You," and he ran up to Moshe Moses, and he said, "You are a spy." And he knew that he's not going to admit it. So he put his hand inside his shirt on his chest. And he said, normally, even if a person is a spy, that they could keep their face straight, but they can't control their heart. Their heart will start pumping, even though they can maybe keep the external parts of their straight. And he wanted to sense if he's getting nervous. And the Moshe Moses says, I learned what the Alter Rebbe taught us. Moyach shalit al alev. The mind controls the heart. And I was absolutely sure it was going to be okay, and my heart was totally calm. And when Napoleon felt my heart and saw that my heart was beating like normal and didn't get scared of his threat, saying I'm a spy, he left me alone. And as a result, we know that the Alter Rebbe was took a big part in saving the Russians. Not only that, the Tsarist Russia, till the end of the Russian regime, had a tradition that they considered, even though they arrested and gave hard time to all of the Chabad Rebbeim, nevertheless, they were considered something, they had this certificate and medals that said that they were private chosen citizens of the land. And that means that they got special features. Why? Because of the Tsarist gratitude to the Alter Rebbe's help in defeating Napoleon. So it's not written much in other books. Of course, we pride ourselves by this in a sense, because we believe that it saved Judaism. Also, we believe the Jewish people were not ready for that level of emancipation. Oh, what happened to my comment? Etc. He actually died. Napoleon actually came looking for the Alter Rebbe, came to the Alter Rebbe's house, and just before he came to the Alter Rebbe's house, we believe that Napoleon had some type of magical or whatever it was. He maybe knew how to work with the negative forces, and the Alter Rebbe was advised by the Russian government that Napoleon was looking for him and wanted to kill him and take him in. So he escaped with his family, and he then sent people back when he realized that he hadn't burnt down, had left some stuff behind. And he was very old, or he was old and weak, and he went to his whole entourage of his family away, and he warned them, make sure you destroy my house and everything inside of it, because if Napoleon is going to try to get hold of something that I own, because Napoleon was able to kind of to work with negative spirits to affect people, that he had a belonging of theirs. So he said, make sure you destroy everything. And that's what they did. They went back, they burnt down the Alter Rebbe's house. His Hasidim burnt down the house, or the Russian soldiers did, so that they wouldn't have any remnants of anything. And Napoleon was extremely upset, apparently, when he came and the Alter Rebbe had escaped and his house was destroyed. However, the Alter Rebbe didn't stay physically alive for much longer. The travel was too much at the time, and on his travels away, escaping from Napoleon, together with his whole family, he died on the way during those travels. And that was the end of his life. But later on, of course, he had founded such a strong movement. When you think of Chabad, you think of building Chabad houses and going out to all parts of the world. Really, what Chabad is a mode of connecting to Judaism on a very deep intellectual way. Wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. The way we connect to God is not through just rituals and study, but actually properly understanding the spirituality behind everything. So we want to bless everyone that on the special occasion of the Alter Rebbe's birthday and the Baal Shem Tov's birthday, everyone should be well, and everyone should be happy and have a good and sweet and meaningful year. Thank you for joining us. If anyone has any questions or points they want to ask about the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, anything else I was discussed tonight, please feel free.
Got one question. Hey, Mendel. So how does Chabad, the movement, how does that be deemed like a progression of Judaism and keep to its traditional values? Like, with the sayings that is like survival of the fittest, which is like, Judaism needs to be fit to survive. So how do you think Judaism can survive in this day and age and still keep to its traditional values with everything that's gone on in history?
Okay, you're asking a very big and full-on question, which really requires a whole hour discussion in and of itself, just because of the length of that discussion. But I'll say a few points about it.
It's a very good topic.
Yeah, number one is the Chabad movement is the progression of Judaism, not away from traditional Judaism. It kept and stuck 100% with the Jewish law. So it doesn't change Jewish law, not at all. It keeps and sticks to Jewish law. What it changes the spirit behind the law. It changes the meaning, the enthusiasm, the passion, the excitement. So, and this answers your other point. Your other point is how is Judaism going to survive? And I've said this many times. Many people think that Judaism will survive and thrive when we become more like the non-Jews, or when we adapt and we start becoming more left-wing and more open-minded and more liberal. And the answer to that is, well, look at people that have tried it and tell me how Judaism is surviving with them. And you will see that after a generation or two, their children will no longer be connected to Judaism, thanks to their liberal values and progressive ideas. There's no longer Judaism in those circles. So the only way to keep Judaism strong is to keep strong in our traditions, in our ways, and not to move away from them. But at the same time, you are right that the old style of Judaism is going to be difficult for people in a modern age, where the age of enlightenment and people are looking for meaning. You can't just practice Judaism. You have to have a lot of passion. And that's why the Rebbe believed that even though the secrets of Judaism, the mystical aspects of Judaism, the intellect behind Judaism, the why, the what, but mainly the why and what is going on behind the scenes was never properly explained. But this is what's going to give people the passion. And I believe if you studied Hasidic Judaism, nothing becomes more incredibly meaningful in the world than your connection to Judaism and to God. And the way you look at your family becomes more meaningful. The way you look at business, the way you look at work, the way you look at everything, to be honest, becomes all that much more meaningful. Okay?
Yep. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so the point is, stick to the tradition, but get the depth, get the intellectual value, because without that, Judaism becomes very dry and difficult to keep up. If you don't have passion in today's day and age, everything else is far more exciting. So you have to be very passionate about it in order for it to survive. Okay?
Yep.
So did you want to say something? No? Okay.
I'll ask something, Rabbi. It's just a suggestion for a future shiur. Mention the Tanya and the position of that publication in the history. Have you ever actually done a shiur on the Tanya?
I have several times, but not very recently. Have I done it since I came to Dingley? I'm not sure. I should do a shiur on the top. Using Noach and Zach and Martin or whatever, and that's a very important shiur. And I would do it. I've given lots of my favorite topic. My favorite book to teach is the Tanya. So I've been teaching it to many people for many years. It's my favorite book. Apologies. Did I just go off over there? Yeah, that happened.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of a delay on mine, but it's all good.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. My whole thing just dropped for a second, but maybe yes, maybe one of these weeks I will do a share and an overview of what the Tanya is about. But if you want to get the details of the Tanya, and actually go through inside the text, then you should come on Shabbos morning. Maybe we'll start one during the week as well. But for now, we do a text-based discussion on the Tanya on Shabbos mornings at 9:15, which I can't put on Zoom, unfortunately, or fortunately, for whatever the way it is. But it does give us a lot of inspiration and food for thought and lots of discussion going into our davening. So maybe I'll give another overview discussion on the Tanya. It's a good one, my favorite one, actually. So I'll do that. Okay, if that's it, we'll call it a night and wish everyone a Shana Tova and hope to see everyone very soon. Well, we've got Shul coming up. We've still got 2 more Shabbatot before Rosh Hashanah, and then we have Rosh Hashanah. So looking forward to seeing everyone in Shul soon and hopefully on Rosh Hashanah as well. Okay, we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rabbi.
We should have a show next week, hopefully, unless it's too crazy before Rosh Hashanah, but God willing, it should go ahead. Have a wonderful night. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.